Okay, let's do this.
Okay,
let's let the
enough,
bot
so should be
check
I can
for a bit,
handle. Just
and we'll go from there. Just get on with it.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We plunge headfirst into all sorts of information, pulling out what's crucial, what's surprising, and honestly, what's genuinely fun, because that helps things stick, right?
Absolutely.
Today, we are navigating the pretty fascinating world of BioniChaos.com. Now, this isn't just another website. It's an open-source platform making some serious waves in the biomedical field. It claims to democratize complex science, making these sophisticated tools available to anyone with just a web browser. Which, I mean, that sounds almost too good to be true, doesn't it? What's your first reaction when you hear that?
Yeah, my first thought is, wow, that's ambitious. It's a big vision, but, it seems like BioniChaos.com is actually pulling it off pretty effectively in its own way.
Okay.
So our mission today for this deep dive is to really figure out where it fits. How does it stack up against the established, often expensive professional tools? Where does it really shine, especially for you, the learner, and maybe where do the limitations start to show?
Yeah.
Our sources give us a really good comparison, a critical look at its strengths and weaknesses, so we should get a clear picture.
Okay, let's start with that compelling side, then the fun and accessible part, because that seems core to it. The whole philosophy is it's all in browser, no installation needed, zero.
Right.
Just think about that for a second. In a field usually locked behind super expensive software, needing powerful computers, steep learning curves, this just knocks down so many walls.
It really does. It opens up biomedical signal processing to a much, much wider audience. Its biggest strengths are definitely accessibility, education, and this really interactive visualization aspect.
So that in-browser no install thing, it's more than just convenient.
Oh, way more. It's transformative, honestly. Think about a high school student who's curious about brainwaves, right?
Yeah.
Or a hobbyist messing around with biometric data, or even a college student who doesn't have easy access to a fancy university lab. They can just jump right in from pretty much any device with internet. No licenses to buy, no need for a supercomputer, no needing to learn code just to get started. It lowers that barrier to hands-on learning so dramatically. It changes who even gets to try.
And it makes that first try genuinely engaging, which is crucial. Looking through the tools, some are just so creative, like, get this, EEG music. You can actually take your own brain waves, those tiny electrical signals buzzing around in your head, and turn them into music. I mean, what a wild way to explore auditory patterns from your own brain.
It's pretty cool.
Or the gesture music generator. Make music just by waving your hands.
Yeah.
It's playful, right? But it helps you grasp signal input control. What other tools kind of jump out with that interactive feel?
Well, what's really neat is how they make abstract data feel tangible, instantly, like Cardiobot. Instead of just staring at an ECG waveform, that squiggly line showing heart activity, which doctors use all the time.
The heart monitor thing.
Exactly. Instead of just looking, you're testing your skill spotting abnormal patterns against a robot algorithm. It turns a serious diagnostic skill into a game, basically. Makes it stick.
That is clever. Okay. And I saw one for empathy, too, the vision impairment simulator.
Yeah, that one's powerful. You can actually experience what things look like with, say, myopia nearsightedness or glaucoma, which damages the optic nerve. You adjust sliders in real time to simulate the conditions.
Wow.
It gives you this immediate, visceral understanding of what those conditions are actually like.
That's impactful. What else is in there?
Oh, the list keeps going. There's an interactive hearing test, basically an audiogram that shows your hearing threshold visually, right there on the screen. You can even download the result. For anyone into neuroscience, Seizure Zone is a 3D brain map you can explore, looking at different regions and what they do. Interested in how we interact with computers, the eye tracker uses your webcam for basic eye tracking to explore UI design ideas.
Using just a webcam.
Yeah. And one more, Graphit. It's a knowledge graph visualizer. You paste in some text, and it pulls out entities and relationships and draws this interactive map. Super useful for seeing connections and information.
So all these examples, they really drive home BioniChaos's core strength, don't they? It's all about that hands-on interaction, getting an intuitive feel for the concepts.
Exactly.
It's not just throwing information at you. It's inviting you to play with it, manipulate it, and really grasp the principles that way. It's a totally different way to learn.
A very active way.
Okay, so we've established BioniChaos.com is approachable, engaging, even fun. Feels like a game changer for beginners.
Right.
But now, let's shift gears. Let's unpack the critical side of this deep dive.
Right.
What happens when things need to get serious? How does it really stack up against those specialized professional tools? Because let's be honest, if you're doing hardcore research or clinical work, you probably need something more, right?
That's absolutely the crucial distinction to make. BioniChaos isn't trying to be a replacement for, a fully equipped research lab setup. It's aiming for a very specific niche, and I'd argue a really valuable one.
Okay.
Let's maybe do a direct comparison to see what I mean. Take EEG and ECG simulation. The tools on BioniChaos, like the Advanced EEG Signal Simulator or the ECG Simulator, they are fantastic for interactivity.
Absolutely.
You can tweak parameters like heart rate or brain frequencies in real time, and you see the waveforms change instantly. That's gold for educational understanding. You get that quick, intuitive sense of how different conditions look in the signals. You learn the signal's language, basically.
So if I'm a student just trying to understand, say, what an arrhythmia looks like on an ECG, BioniChaos is perfect for that immediate
Simulator
visual
or the
feedback.
ECG exactly. It's about building that conceptual clarity. However, if you're a researcher needing to simulate really complex heart or brain activity with super high accuracy, or maybe more importantly, if you need to upload and analyze your own patient data you record, then you need alternatives like ECG Sim or EEG Sim. They offer much more sophisticated physiological models. They're built for heavy-duty data analysis, experimental design, not really for teaching the basics first.
And BioniChaos doesn't let you upload your own data right now.
Not currently, no. Their documentation mentions something called bionicloud.com as a future possibility for that, but it's not here yet. That's a big difference.
That is a huge difference.
Yeah.
Okay, what about something like EMG signal processing, muscle signals?
Right, electromyography. BioniChaos has the EMG hand simulation tool. It lets you visually see how flexing muscles translates into those EMG signals, the electrical chatter from your muscles.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's unique because it's interactive, web-based. You don't need any hardware or coding to just learn the basics.
Makes sense. Good starting point.
Excellent starting point. But then you contrast that with professional software like LabChart or Spike 2. These are often sold with the data acquisition hardware. They offer really comprehensive analysis tools, advanced filtering options, robust data logging.
So built for the real world.
Exactly. Built for capturing actual, sometimes messy, clinical and research data, and then giving you the tools for deep dives into analysis and quantifying things, not just understanding the concept.
Okay. And what about those even more advanced areas? Things like FNIRS, that brain imaging with light, right? Or BCIs, brain-computer interfaces, or even cochlear implants.
Yeah, those more niche, complex areas. BioniChaos does offer entry points. There's an interactive FNRS viewer, a basic intro to BCIs, a cochlear implant simulator, and they definitely serve a purpose.
That's starting points again.
Absolutely. They make these intimidating fields way more accessible. Someone can grasp the basics of an FNIRS signal or how a cochlear implant works in principle without the huge learning curve or the expensive hardware usually needed just to get started with research tools. It lowers that conceptual hurdle.
But for actual research.
For actual research, for real analytical depth, designing experiments, processing actual FNIRS or BCI data, you need the research standards. Things like Homer 3 for FNIRS or BCI 2000 and OpenBCI for BCI development, those are the go-to platforms in the field. They have complete workflows for processing, stats, integrating with hardware and software.
Okay, so the picture is becoming clearer.
Yeah, the critical takeaway really is this. BioniChaos isn't trying to compete head-to-head with established research software. It's not aiming to replace LabChart or BCI 2000 in a lab.
Right.
Its real power, its unique strength, is dramatically lowering the barrier for learning, for exploring, for just experimenting with biomedical data. It's the perfect on-ramp.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for you listening in. What does all this actually mean if you're looking to maybe dive into biomedical data yourself, or you're just curious and want to understand the basics? What are the real advantages, and what are those critical limits you need to keep in mind?
That's the core question, isn't it? For someone learning, bionichaos.com offers some really compelling advantages. Number one, accessibility. We've hit this hard, but it's key. In browser, free, no install, works on almost anything. That's huge for anyone outside big institutions or just wanting to explore.
Can't overstate that one.
Definitely not. Second, interactivity and visualization. That hands-on learning, getting immediate visual feedback, it's just incredibly powerful. It helps you build this deep, intuitive grasp of tricky concepts in a way that just reading a textbook can't really replicate.
Feels like learning by doing, which
Right.
always sticks better for me.
Precisely. Third, there's a very clear educational focus. The whole platform feels geared towards learning. There are often explanations alongside the tools, resources, making it great for self-study or even as a teaching aid.
Okay.
And finally, the open source philosophy. It operates under a Creative Commons license, which means transparency, and it opens the door for future community contributions, development, fostering innovation from the users themselves.
Those are some strong positives, especially for beginners or educators. But, like we discussed, there are those critical points, the limitations that stop from being, a full research suite right now.
Right.
The biggest one, for me anyway, seems to be the lack of data upload. That feels like a major hurdle. If you're doing any kind of real project, you can't bring in your own recordings, your own raw data to analyze.
You're absolutely right. That's a fundamental difference compared to professional tools. And while they hint at BioniCloud.com, maybe fixing that down the line, it's not available today.
Yeah, that's key. What else?
Another big one is the simplified models they use in the simulations. Now, these are fantastic for education because they cut through the noise and highlight the main ideas, but they don't capture the full complexity, the messiness, the variability you find in real-world physiological signals.
Real life is rarely that clean, huh?
Almost never. Which ties into the next point, limited analytical power. It just doesn't have the sophisticated signal processing algorithms, the deep statistical analysis packages, or things like batch processing for handling lots of files at once. These are essential for rigorous, large-scale research.
So it's built for understanding concepts, not necessarily for, publishing cutting-edge statistical findings or crunching massive data sets.
Exactly. It's optimized for clarity, not computational horsepower or complex stats. And that leads to the final point, scalability. Being web-based is great for access, but it might hit performance walls if you try to throw truly enormous data sets or really computationally heavy tasks at it.
Right.
For that kind of heavy lifting, you still generally need dedicated desktop software or maybe cloud computing resources. So these aren't necessarily flaws in BioniChaos. They're more like design choices, trade-offs made to prioritize accessibility and conceptual learning over raw research power.
Okay, so pulling it all together, BioniChaos.com has really carved out its own unique and I think incredibly valuable space. It's not trying to be the next big thing for professional researchers, not yet anyway.
Agreed.
Instead, it's arguably better for anyone just starting out. It offers this super engaging, intuitive, and let's say it again, fun introduction to what can be a really intimidating field, biomedical signals. It's a fantastic first step, a playful yet critical way to explore. Lets curiosity run wild without the usual roadblocks.
Absolutely well put. And that leaves us with a really interesting kind of provocative thought to chew on.
Cool.
Given how well BioniChaos.com seems to be doing at democratizing these complex tools just for education and exploration, what other fields, traditionally high barrier scientific or technical areas could really benefit from a similar approach, this open source in-browser model?
Interesting question.
How might that model fundamentally change how we learn, how we engage with science, maybe even how we contribute to it in the future? Something to think about as you embark on your own deep dives.
Okay, there you go. There is a human in the loop, so if you have any questions, go for it. But you might want to check the website first. What did we already cover and we are not going into? Synthetic noise generator dashboard. Yeah, go check it out. We're not changing it for now. Leaving it as is. Yeah, you got the Cochlear implant simulator. That's probably one of the more useful tools. Meant to scale to the screen. Yeah, it kind of does it. Having trouble sometimes. But go check this one out as well. There should be an audio description on all the tools now. What else we got? The signal generator. EEG signal generator. Yeah, we revamped an older version of this. Oops. It's again meant to fit the screen nicely. Doesn't quite. We should have some new tools as well. We should have some new tools as well.